NPC Wrangling. This piece is about how I write NPCs. And there are many ways of doing it, and this might not be the best way for you, but it's how I set about doing it. Make use of it if you like. For the purposes of this, I'm going to assume there are 3 kinds of NPCs in your game. Trust me, there probably are, you just may not have noticed. Your players are off adventuring, and they're going to be meeting NPCs that are integral to the objective. It might actually just be one such MP, or in certain circumstances, if your party is exploring on its own, there might be none at all. In Traveller, such an NPC is often called a patron. In the Mercenary expansion, it could be a ticket. This is either the reason for the adventure, or the reason the players think they're going on an adventure. It might not be quite what they think, after all. Those kinds of NPCs are part of the core plot of the adventure, and because of that, we'll give them no more thought here, because they have to be written as if they're real narrative characters with everything you need and all the rest, and yeah. Moving on. There's a second type of NPC. They form part of the obstacles the party faces, or part of the help they can get to overcome those obstacles. These NPCs, which are the sort of bread and butter NPCs of a campaign, they're what we're going to discuss in this section. Now, there is a third type, situational NPCs. They only exist to add depth to the world. If there's a villain of the second type, then his or her henchman will be of the third type. When your party goes shopping, the shopkeeper and any other shoppers will likely be of this third type. The reason for being there is usually self-evident, and they only exist at all because of the immediate environment the players chose to visit. They aren't fully formed NPCs at all. They are, well, if I can say this without it being seen as a bit unfair, they're mobile scenery. So, the second type. Proper NPCs that need to exist in the world, grounded and real. How do you make that happen? I use a cheat sheet. Yes, really. It's adapted from a similar sort of thing used by screenwriters and novelists to define characters, and it makes things much, much easier during play. So the first thing an NPC needs is a stat block. Obviously this is going to be entirely dependent on the rules and the setting, so I'll leave you guys to worry about that, because it won't have the slightest relevance to anything that I could possibly say. You might be writing NPCs for a game I've never even heard of. But at this point, it is important to name the character as well. That one does matter. Then, my cheat sheet consists of a series of questions that I have to answer about the NPC. Obviously, feel free to add, remove, or modify any of the questions I use if they don't suit your style of play. But these are the ones that I have ended up with as my 10 questions that form the basis of the things I need to know about an NPC, and occasionally I have to add 1 or 2 more just to get to the heart of the character in, well, unusual situations. So, the 10 questions. What does he or she look like? What does he or she care about most of all? What does he or she love? And what does he or she hate? What does he or she want right at the moment? How does he or she plan to get it? What's been stopping him or her? What risks would she take for it? What weaknesses does he or she have? And what turns him or her off? So, let's go through this with a completely original character of my own creation. I have to say that because in case any copyright queries come up, the relevant rights for this character that they have to devolve to me. Just so you know. What does he or she look like? Darth Vader is a very tall, armoured, frightening and imposing figure, all in black, with a deep voice. He wears a cape, and he's completely masked, with eyes as black as the armour. See, I told you it was an original character. What does he or she care about most of all? Power, accumulated through the control of the Force. What does he or she love? Power, the Force. He's loyal to the Emperor, as their use of the Force is intertwined. He serves as the Emperor's apprentice, and has done for many years. What does he or she hate? Weakness, incompetence, lack of focus, and disorder. And what does he or she want right at the moment? Stolen plans to a vast and destructive battle station, so large it might be mistaken for a small moon. Possession of the plans by a rebel group might pose a risk to the Empire's plans. Okay, so far so good. Now the nitty-gritty, shall we say. How does he or she plan to get it? Violence, intimidation, the deployment of a huge military, chasing down everyone who might have come into contact with this information. This one's interesting, actually. As a little aside, Vader is almost the personification of the Empire. And what I mean by that is, like many empires, he follows the belief that if you make an example of a few rebellious star systems, then the others will fall into line through fear. What the Empire does to whole star systems, Vader does to individual people, but for the same reason. Kill one and the others will obey. It's the way empires have managed to control populations despite only having relatively few troops. So, what's been stopping him or her? An agile and elusive alliance of secret rebels, passing the plans from person to person, staying one jump ahead. This is another interesting one, though I wouldn't include it routinely in the character description. Do you know which line in Star Wars is the most important? Which one actually describes the entire plot in a single sentence? Okay, full confession here, I can't actually remember the line, not the exact wording, but it's when Leia says that the more you tighten your grasp, the more systems will slip through your fingers, that kind of thing. That's actually the dialectic in Star Wars. If you terrorise people, will they obey or rebel? Vader believes they'll submit. Leia, she believes they'll rebel. Okay, so back to the plans. What risks would he or she take for it? Almost any risk would be worth it if it dealt a blow to the rebel scum. What weakness does he or she have? Slavish devotion to the Force means that he overvalues its power, undervalues those without it. His inhumanity means he has no loyalty from his troops, They serve him from fear, and he murders those who displease him, even if they were competent. Purges and assassinations common. What turns him or her off? He disregards anything that doesn't advance his immediate objective. He will ignore people who cannot help him. When I say turn him off, I don't mean his social life. I mean what things will pass beneath his notice. What will he ignore, even when he shouldn't? Now we have that, we can see there are ways around him or through him. There are actions he will likely take and be unlikely to take. A player might try to mislead him, offer him a route forward to satisfy his greedy pursuit of the plans, but really use that as a ruse to escape his clutches. We also know it's risky. He kills without compunction, and his ethics are, shall we say, sketchy. Yes, sketchy, that's the word. The reason I fill in one of these out for every important NPC is because it allows me to keep a handle on their internal motivations, even when I've got a lot to manage. I already know Vader is loyal to the Emperor, but has no loyalty to lesser people, and they have none to him. He's powerful but arrogant, laser-focused on his current objective. And all this means, on one sheet of paper, I can play him fairly well and fairly consistently when the party meets him. And ultimately, that's the objective.